Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
My name is Harkirat Singh.
And I'm Bhupinder Singh.
And welcome to this week's episode of Seeking Sikhism. Now, today's episode, we're going to kind of change it around a bit and talk a little bit about something that people often don't usually talk about. Something that people often overlook or avoid. And it's the concept or notion of death. Dare I say it? Ooh, death. It's a scary thing, really. People are scared of death. And today we're just going to discuss a little bit about what happens when you die and what death is and what really is it that dies. And, why do you think people do act like that? It's commonly known that we all know that we are going to die. But why is it that people avoid that?
Yeah, I think death is basically the only thing in life that's really guaranteed for us,
yeah.
right? We're born, we can be rich or poor or successful or unsuccessful. Anything can happen in our life. That the one guarantee, the one thing that we all have in common as human beings or any animal is there's a guarantee that we're going to die. And the reason I think that people are so afraid of it, it's basically fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen when we die. Where do we go? What happens?
Yeah.
Right? We have no idea about that.
Yeah,
yes, go ahead.
So I was going to say that we don't have any concrete idea of the emotion that is felt when you die. Science hasn't really explained to us. It has tried in words, but we can't get the feeling of emotion or that feeling that you're going to get when you die because words don't have that sort of power, right? I can't tell you exactly how I feel when I have my favorite type of ice cream accurately, because words don't have that power, and just you don't really know.
Yeah, you don't. And also another thing is that when we die, we have to go alone, and that's something that also scares us. Is in the world we can have the support, the help of our family, our friends, and anything like any kind of crisis we have, we need their help. They're there for us. But death is that one thing. It's that frontier where you're basically all alone. You're going by yourself.
Definitely.
And you can't rely on your friends or family to help you at that point where something you gotta experience on your own.
Yeah.
And it's a natural part. A lot of times we try to avoid it, but it's a natural part. It's a part of life.
Yeah.
Like without life, there's no death. Without death, there's no life. So basically life and death, they do go hand in hand. And I think that we should talk about it. It's something that we are going to experience one day, and there's nothing. We're so afraid of it that we don't want to talk about it. But I think it's something that we should talk about and should be aware of.
Yeah, but it's scary though. Death, and I don't know if it really should be something that we should always be thinking about. Right? There's people out there who are always avoiding death, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to die right now. I hope I don't get struck by lightning." But I guess maybe not that extreme, right? But it isn't something that we should always be thinking about. I think it's more something that we should realize and accept as a part of life. I think that in realizing this cycle of birth and death and kind of seeing the world from a third-person perspective, when doing that can maybe take you a step towards peace of mind and that acceptance, right?
Yeah. Another thing, we talk about what exactly is death. What is death anyways, right?
Yeah.
In Sikhism, death is more like of a transition. It's a transition from basically one life or one body into another. So it's sort of like the end of the soul's current experience and the beginning of a new experience. And we're going to touch a little bit more about that, about what does Sikhism believe, what happens after you die. Basically, we'll touch a little bit on that as well. I just want to read quickly a little bit from Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, the sixth scripture, and it's explaining a little bit about death. And we can read that out for you a little bit here. What Guru Sahib here is telling us: what do I know? How will I die? What sort of death will it be? If I do not forget the Lord Master from my mind, then my death will be easy. The world is terrified of death. Everyone longs to live. By Guru's grace, one who dies while yet alive understands the Lord's will. O Nanak, one who dies such a death lives forever. So the concept here of Guru Sahib is telling us is dying while you're still alive.
Yeah.
What does that mean, dying while you're still alive? Basically, in Sikhism, there's a concept called Jivan Mukt. And that means that liberation is attained while you're still alive, while you're still in the human body. You become one with God already. Your soul and God are already one, right? So Sikhism says that Jivan Mukti is something that, it's not something that when you die, okay, I'm going to find out now. Am I going to go to, what's going to happen to me now, right?
Yeah.
It's not like that, right? It's something that we experience experiencing God while we're still alive, and we
Yeah.
already know from
Yeah.
beforehand
Yeah.
what's going to happen to
Yeah,
us.
exactly. Death or dying. People say, when you die, but what is it that dies? And like you said before, it's more about your soul, the separation of the soul and the body, and your five senses and your fingers and your money, your wealth, and all these pleasures that you receive when you have and when you're in control of this body. Those things won't last afterwards, right? It's hard to grasp that we're not like a computer. You can't just turn us off and electricity's gone and that's it, you're done. There's something after that, and that's your soul. That's what's left behind. And there's one thing that people have to recognize is the separation of the soul and the body, right? And the soul and the body is what dies and not the soul, right? That's what death applies to. There's actually a tuk, and it's na o mare na thage jai janke ram basai man mai. And neither death or deception comes to those within whose mind the Lord abides. So that death of the soul, it doesn't apply to those people who have Guruji or the Lord in their minds, right?
There's this very beautiful quote that I heard. It's absolutely beautiful. I love this quote. And what it says, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Right? Once again, let's think about that, what it means. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And I guess what happens is we think that we are human beings and this is our chance to get spiritual, to live a spiritual life. But in fact, it's our spirit that is having a human experience. It's our spirit which has traveled through many different bodies. According to Sikhism, what happens when we die? According to Sikhism, it depends.
Yeah.
Right? It depends on certain things.
Just leave it at that. It depends.
It depends. And what does it depend on?
Yeah, exactly.
It depends basically on the chance, when we were here on earth as human beings, what kind of thoughts, actions we had, what kind of deeds we did. And that will depend what happens after we die. In Sikhism, we do believe that the soul travels from body to body. And millions of bodies, millions of species. And Guru Granth Sahib Ji explains 8.4 million different species of life. And the soul travels through all these species. And the human life is that one point where we can end that cycle of birth and death. So we don't know in our past where we have come from, what sort of species or animals, whatever we have traveled through. But what we do know is right now we are human beings. And Guru Sahib tells us, Pei Parapat Manuk De Horiya, Goban Manaki Ehe Teri Bariya, that you have obtained the human body. This is your chance to attain union with God. Right? So there's kind of two ways we can go. The first way is if we do if our soul goes towards a path of purification, and we do the meditation and we do the good deeds, and we have the compassion and the love and all those godlike qualities, then we basically become one with God. Our soul merges back with God. But if we don't, then this one chance that we have, this human life we had, we don't do that, we'll fall back into the cycle of birth and death.
The cycle of reincarnation. Yes, there's another talk. It's Sachi Kare, Sach Mile, Gurmat Palle Pai, Sonar Jamme, Na Mare, Na Ave, Na Jai. And what that means is, by true actions, the true Lord is met, and the Guru's teachings are found. Then they're not subject to birth and death, and they do not come and go in reincarnation. So that really is the ultimate goal, to not be within that goal, that cycle of reincarnation, to kind of escape it in like a portal. And it's kind of like an analogy that comes to mind is, imagine you have a guy and he's blind and he's in a huge room, a circular room, and there's like 100 doors in that room. But out of those 100 doors, there's only one door that's unlocked. There's only one door that lets him outside, and all the other 99 doors are locked. So he starts off at one of the doors and it's locked, and he goes to the next door and it's locked, and he's just feeling for these doors, and he goes to the next one and it's locked, next one it's locked. And then he finally gets to that one door that's unlocked, right? After going through so many doors, and he scratches his neck, and he goes to the next door. He skips it. And that's like, that's disappointing. That's like, missing a field goal from the 10-yard line. It's like, come on, man, open that door. And really, that was his opportunity, and he missed it, and now he's just going to go around again.
So the human life is like that door, I guess. That it's that door, that one exit point that leads out of this cycle of birth and death. and can lead to union. But it all depends on basically on the actions that we do, what we do on Earth during the time we have as a human. What we do will kind of reflect, it'll depend on what happens after we die.
I mean, but what happens when you die? Like, people often go into grave detail that this happens and then this happens, and then the concept of heaven and hell. And in Sikhi, what heaven and hell is that they're more concepts rather than physical places. And let's say heaven is union with God and hell is separation from God. And these separation from God, that is hell, because that's not what you want, right? That's not the pleasure that your soul wants. And you have these two concepts, and anything other than union with God is suffering, like you said before, right?
And just the value of the human life, like, we're so lucky, but the thing is, we forget. I forget, right?
Yeah.
We forget about how important our chance here. And we have such a limited time in order to fulfill our purpose, our mission in life, which is union with God. But instead, what happens is, in Gurbani it says, Khana, Pina, Hasana, Sona, Visarda Gaya Hai Marna. And that means that, we eat, we drink, we sleep, we laugh, we do everything, but we forget about God. We forget about death, I should say. Right? It's one thing we forget about, but we should, a lot of things in our life, we focus on making our future better. We get RSPs, we get college funds, right, for the kids, everything like that. So we kind of like a will, right? All the things, we're looking out for the future, right? Always looking out for the future. But we don't really think about, we think about just this life. We're not really focused on the next life, what happens after we die. And this precious human birth, it could just go to waste.
Yeah,
right?
definitely. The RRSPs, we all think that, I assume if my beard does come in, that it's going to go white. I think that I'm going to get old. And that's one thing that isn't really encouraged, right? You have to recognize that death is all around us. People are dying every day, and that death can happen at any time to us. It's hard to think that death is all around us, whether it be your death or someone else's death. And death really is something that's hard to cope with, right? It's almost depressing to sit there and think about death. But what you have to try and avoid is to be depressed like that, and it is to accept death. And one way you can do that is to look towards the Guru, towards religion, towards faith in God, and even the God in other people, and to share your discussions of death with other people in society and live amongst that society. And hopefully with that research, with that knowledge, with that sharing community, you'll learn to accept death and recognize death as evident and inevitable.
I think that sometimes in life, what we do is naturally we think that death is so far away, right? We still have a lot of time. I got lots of time. I can just, relax and take it easy. When I get old, and I'll turn into a saint. I'll just be like, meditating and, like you said, have the big flow white beard and the glow coming from you and everything like that, right? But the thing is, we don't know when death is going to happen. It's so unpredictable. When, where, how. These are all the things that are just up in the air, really. And there's one beautiful example from Sikhism and Sikh history I want to share with you. It's about somebody named Baba Buddha Ji. And if you look at that word Buddha, it means old person, like an old man is Buddha. And there's a person whose name was this, Baba Buddha Ji, and he was just an ideal Sikh. How did he get that name, Buddha? I'll explain that. He was 12 years old, and this is when he never met Guru Nanak Dev Ji. He was 12 years old, and the first time he met Guru Nanak Dev Ji, he asked Guru Nanak Dev Ji a question. And the question he asked was, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, how can I break this cycle of birth and death and attain salvation, become one with God? And Guru Nanak Dev Ji was quite surprised to hear this kind of question coming from a child. Usually just old people ask these kind of questions. And Guru Nanak Dev Ji said, he basically said to me, he's like, why are you concerned about this? Why are you're 12 years old, why are you asking questions about death? You should be focusing on playing, like all the other kids are all playing and having fun. But he was thinking about death. And he goes, you know what? I'll tell you why. He told Guru Nanak Dev Ji why he started thinking about death. And this is what happened. He said, about 1 year ago, we were in our farm. They own a farm. And he goes, I was helping my father in the farm. And we had some crops growing. And some were totally ripe. Some were like halfway there. Some were just starting to grow. And he goes, the army came to town. And all the soldiers, they brought their horses and brought everything. And they came and basically trampled that whole farm. And all those crops, all the vegetables, whatever they had growing there, everything died, right? And he goes, when I looked at it and everything died, I started thinking to myself that, you know what? Some of those crops that died, some of them were totally ripe. Some of them were just like sort of like halfway. And some of them were just starting to grow. But he goes, that when those soldiers came and the feet of those horses came and they stomped them and they were indiscriminate.
Yeah.
And it killed all of them equally. So he started thinking to himself and he goes, you know what? Who knows when death can come to a human being, right? Death is not looked at to see how old somebody is. It could happen any time. And he goes, since that time I started thinking to myself that, you know what? Death can come any time. It's so unpredictable. And Guru Nanak Dev Ji, when he heard this and he goes, you know, the way you talk, you don't talk like a little boy. You talk like an old man, like a Buddha. And from that day on, Guru Nanak Dev Ji named him Baba Buddha Ji. And Baba Buddha Ji is an ideal Gursikh. He was
around for a long time.
He lived up to the age of 125 years. He met Guru Nanak Dev Ji when he's 12 years old. So basically, he became involved or in the Sikh religion for 113 years of his life. And in that time, he saw physically with his eyes, he saw 6 gurus. He was there for 6 gurus. He saw them during 6 guruships, I should say. And also he was like an ideal Guru Sikh, and even sometimes he was an advisor to Sikhs. Sometimes the Guru would even say, in his absence, the Guru would tell people to go to Baba Buddha Ji for advice, and he also helped in building the Akal Takht Sahib, and also he was the first head priest, the first Granthi Sahib of Sri Harmandir Sahib, of Golden Temple. So he was just an ideal Guru Sikh. And you know, what a blessing. Since 12 years old, his name was Baba Buddha Ji.
Yeah, 12 years old, thinking about something like that, that's really hard to think about, because, you know, it's scary because we're reminded of death all the time. We always hear about people dying, but then we just go ahead and have our dinners at home and forget about it and have a nice little sleep. But I think it's because we spend a lot of our time thinking about materialistic things and money and wealth and pleasuring our body. And one thing that we don't do is pleasure our soul, and that only pleasure for our soul is union with God. And in our life, we're too preoccupied with these pleasures and this money, and so we don't really have that time to prepare for God. I think that, you know, people say live every day like it's your last, and people say that, you know, you should go about your day thinking of death all the time. But, you know, what do you think that means, right? Because if someone were to live every day to their last, and they might just take that as, you know, feeding their bodily pleasures, right, and doing wrongful things like that. So how do you live every day to your last?
You know, a lot of times in society, when you say live every day like your last, it could mean, like, you know, have a lot of fun, go skydiving, go bungee jumping, try new things, try different things, right, travel the world, right, which is fine. You can do that if you want, right? However, when we look at live every day like it's your last, we should be like thinking about how every action we do, it could be our last action. So at the end of the day, do I have any enemies? Did I hurt anybody's feelings? Right? Because that could be something that could be the last thing you do in life, right? So living every day like your last also means that preparing yourself for death, preparing yourself for union with God, right? And not just wasting this human life. And it's very sad. And sometimes what happened is, like me and you talking here right now, we're talking about this, and I'll say for myself, we talk about death and we start thinking about it, and after we leave the studio, we just get back to our life again, and we totally forget again. And we start thinking of ourselves, oh, you know, that's going to happen a long time down the road, a long time down the road.
We're actually going skydiving right after this episode, so we're totally going to forget about it.
So, but Guru Sahib explains to us that death can come at any time. There's no guarantee when it can happen. And there's one beautiful example in Guru Granth Sahib Ji, what Guru Sahib says about death. It says, Din se chade, fir aathve rehn सवाई जाए दिन चढ़े फिर आथवै रैन सवाई जाए आव कटे नर ना बुझे नित मूसा लाज टुकाए. And what that means is the day dawns and then it ends, and the night passes away. Man's life is diminishing, but he does not understand. Each day the mouse of death is gnawing away at the rope of life. So life is like a rope, and the mouse is like death, and it's gnawing away at that rope, and we don't know how long it's going to last. It could be gnawing for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40, 50 years, but at one time that rope is going to snap, that rope is going to break, the rope of life is going to break, and at that point, all those dreams we had, all the goals we had in our life, it's kind of too late.
It's too late, and we find that we're unprepared for death. We're like, oh no, you know, it can't be time yet. You know, if you were to die in a hospital bed, you'd be sitting in that hospital bed thinking that, you know, I'm not ready for this yet. I still have so much to do. I still have to, you know, grow a beard, right?
It'll come one day, don't worry, it'll come.
I gotta stop poking fun of myself. But yeah, and it's tough. And the separation from the soul and the body, again, it has to be something you realize. You said thinking about death all the time. And you shouldn't be, personally, I don't think that you should always be scared of death. You should be thinking about it, but don't contemplate about it. And you should recognize it and accept it and embrace death. Well, I think that when you do die, I think one thing that happens is that your soul, when we talked about separation of the soul and body, and the soul almost enters a higher state of consciousness, right? To be general enough to say that your soul, it goes into another place and it can see more. It can see multi-dimensions. And again, that just emphasizes how this human body is like a cage. And we won't be able to see that multi-dimension in this human body because we're only restricted to these 5 senses,
yeah.
right? And there's actually another tuk, and it's Sunni de Daravani, Ja Jio Vicho Jai, Pahe Blandi Vijvi, Tuo Na Nixio Kai, Panche Runne Duk Pare, Binse Duje Pai. And what's being said is the empty body is dreadful when the soul goes out from within. And this body, when the soul's out of it, it's just going to decompose and turn into dirt. The burning fire of life is extinguished, and the smoke of breath no longer emerges. The 5 relatives, or the 5 senses, weep and wail painfully, and waste away through the love of duality. So again, these 5 senses, everything that we think we're trying to please, everything that we're looking for, should not be what we're looking for. And yeah.
Yeah, I think it's more of a journey. Life's purpose. It's like a journey. Like example I want to give. In this life, we have a purpose, and there's certain goals that we have in life. And I want to compare it to like a video game. Comparing life to like a video game. Now, when you play a video game, there's a certain mission, a certain goal that you have in that game. So you go around and you got to complete that mission. And there's also certain things in the game that can harm you. Like there's enemies, like, Super Mario Brothers you're playing, and there's certain those things you got to jump over, and enemies and all that, right? You got to avoid certain things. Certain things can hurt you, and certain things can give you, kind of like heal you, right? And sometimes in some video games, they have like in the top corner, they have like it says the life meter, right? So certain things that if you encounter, your life meter will go down, and certain things you encounter, you can bring it back up again, right? And in life, it's like we have the spiritual meter, right? The spiritual life meter. And in our life, like there's things that can hurt us. There's Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Ahankar. There's the lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. These are things that are kind of taking us away, bringing our spiritual meter down. And then there's also things like you can do like positive actions, like having love for people, having compassion, serving people, meditation, remembering God, doing all these good deeds are things that basically bring our spiritual meter up. And now in the video game, if we're just like playing the game, we're just jumping around one place and not really just like, going back and forth, not really focused on the end goal. We're not going to complete that game. We're not going to complete the mission, right? And same thing in life. If we're just going around, if all we focus on life is, a lot of times that when we focus on an average human being, our life is basically based around, growing up, playing, making money, getting a good job, raising our kids, and then dying, right? And if you think about it, there's not much of a difference then between a human life and a life of an animal. Like any animal you see, they do the same things. Like you see, like, for example, like a tiger, the cubs, they play, and you get older, and then they also have families, and they go hunting, which is kind of like how we can say about working, going, getting food and stuff like that. And there's really no like difference between that. But God has given human beings that special intellect to go beyond that. And that's why the human life is like that exit. It's that point where we can actually meditate and use our consciousness, use our spirituality to basically escape from this lifeful, and not just living by on instinct, like a lot of animals live on instinct. And we want to be careful we don't fall into that same kind of cycle as well as
exactly.
Life from
like you said, it's like that portal, that escape. And then maybe we should even see death as that escape or that portal instead of seeing death as the end. Let's see it as that transition, that transition to your soul of going into a higher state of existence.
Yeah.
So
I just wanted to read something out from Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji once again, because our show is try to base everything on the teachings of Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Like, yes, we do say our own like analogies and everything as well, but the core concept of the show is the teachings of Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Here's a quick. I just want to read a quick few quotes here from Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. It says, "Give them up. Give up the pleasures of corruption. You are entangled in them, you crazy fool, like an animal grazing in the green fields." So Guru Sahib is being very blunt with us, right? Telling us that we are wasting away our life with the pleasures of corruption. "That which you believe to be of use to you shall not go even an inch with you. Naked you came, and naked you shall depart. You shall go round and round the cycle of birth and death, and you shall be food for death. Watching the transitory dramas of the world, you are embroiled and enmeshed in them, and you laugh with delight. The string of life is wearing thin, day and night, and you have done nothing for your soul. Doing your deeds, you have grown old. Your voice fails, and your body has become weak. You were enticed by Maya in your youth, and your attachment for it has not diminished, not even a bit. The Guru has shown me that this is the way of the world. I have abandoned the dwelling of pride and entered your sanctuary. The saint has shown me the path of God. Slave Nanak has